Welcome to the Bald Brad Show. In today's episode, we have President Joe Biden waging war against the oil industry. Now, before we jump into all the clips and information, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. It really does help us grow here at the show, so your help would be greatly appreciated. Now, with that being said, we have President Joe Biden mocking the CEO of Chevron on Tuesday. This happened after the oil executive denounced Biden for vilifying oil companies. Now, if you recall, Joe Biden's been having this back and forth on energy during his primaries, during the beginning of his administration. He wanted to remove fossil fuels from the energy sector. So he put in place the energy secretary that wants to follow suit and get rid of fossil fuels as well, telling people while they can't afford gas prices to go and buy an electric vehicle. Well, Joe Biden sent a letter to all the CEOs of the major oil companies and was basically telling them to figure things out. And Chevron's looking at Joe Biden going, what the hell are you talking about, man? We're producing more oil than literally in our company's history. So how do you expect us to do more when you want to put regulation after regulation? You want to put all these loopholes that we have to go through in order to produce oil, while at the same time making us seem like the villain, but you're the good guy. And how much more do you want us to produce when we're already hitting record numbers as a company? So Chevron sent Biden a letter Tuesday in response to one that Biden executives sent 7 oil companies last week. In Biden's letter, the president threatened to use emergency authorities if the companies do not comply with demands to increase production. It's like holding them hostage almost. Where's my ransom is what basically Joe Biden's asking for. If you don't give him the ransom, he's going to put in emergency authorities, executive orders, and he will make you bend at the knee. But according to Worth, Chevron CEO, the company is producing more oil today than any other point in company's history, thus deflating the charge that oil companies are not working hard enough as gas prices remain at record highs. After outlining Chevron's production numbers and its investments, Worth took aim at Biden, saying, quote, "Your administration has largely sought to criticize and at times vilify our industry," Worth said. "These actions are not beneficial to meeting the challenges we face and are not what the American people deserve. The solution to this ongoing crisis," Worth explained, "requires thoughtful action and a willingness to work together, not political rhetoric," which is exactly what Joe Biden's been doing. If Joe Biden can be seen as the hero, if Joe Biden can be seen as the good guy, Putin, the oil industry, Trump, the Republicans, the conservatives, if they're all the villains and Trump's the one superhero, it's all political. And that's exactly what he's trying to make it. Except the American people, the oil industry, everybody else is fighting back against Joe Biden because he's the true villain and good always prevails. Well, you also have Worth, therefore, suggested that bringing down gas prices and increasing oil supply will require a change in approach. And that change in approach needs to come from Biden. The U.S. energy sector needs cooperation and support from your administration for our country to return to a path towards greater energy security, economic prosperity, and environmental protection. Now, this is going to be tough for Joe Biden because that's not what he promised his base. That's not what he promised the Democrat Party. The Democrat Party doesn't want fossil fuels. Look at AOC and her green energy, the Green New Deal, and tell me that they want to go forward with having more oil production, more oil being refined so we can have better gas prices here at the pump. We need clarity and consistency on policy matters ranging from leases and permits on federal lands to the ability to permit and build critical infrastructure to the proper role of regulation that considers both costs and benefits. And this is something that Joe Biden doesn't understand and that they'll have to explain to him, I believe, later this week on Thursday about what's the cost, the benefits, how competition works. Just because they don't pull leases or permits doesn't mean they actually utilize them. They do this in competition to make their competitors think that they're going to be drilling for oil, so their competitors pull more permits. And it's just a head game for these companies. Doesn't mean they're actually going to drill, doesn't mean there's actually even oil though there. Well, how did Biden respond to all this? So the president was asked about Worth's letter at the White House on Tuesday. Let's go ahead and just see the president's viewpoint and his answer to all of this. This comes from Twitter.
Yes.
A question on the Chevron CEO's complaint today. He said that your administration has largely criticized the oil and gas industry and at times vilified it, and that the administration would need to take a change in approach in order to make progress on reducing energy prices and to increase supply. Do you have a reaction to that, sir?
It's mildly sensitive. I didn't know they'd get their feelings hurt that quickly. Look, we need more refining capacity. This idea that they don't have oil to drill and to bring up is simply not true. This piece of the Republicans talking about Biden shut down fields, wrong. 9,000 of them, okay? So then we ought to be able to work something out whereby they're able to increase refining capacity and still not give up on transitioning to renewable energy.
So there you have Joe Biden sitting on the podium, taking unvetted answers, and we know they're unvetted because of the way that he answered it by saying that they're sensitive. Nothing seems outrageous or unreasonable in terms of what Chevron said. And then he goes on to say about the 9,000 permits. So there's actually more than 9,000. There's almost 9,200 permits out there. And he's saying that we need more oil, which Chevron's saying, look, we're already producing a lot. You've created certain barriers for us that we can't get past. And we'll go over some of the solutions that the energy in terms of oil is looking for at the very end of this episode. Well, how did Chevron respond to all this? In response to a question about Biden's remarks, a Chevron spokesperson told The Blaze that Worth is looking forward to a meeting with Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm on Thursday. Now, here's the problem. The Energy Secretary wants people to drive electric vehicles, even though they can't even afford gas at this present time. So what's Joe Biden's solution to all this? Well, he wants a gas tax holiday, a 3-month gas tax holiday. And if this is reminiscent, it's because we've heard of this before. Well, while his poll numbers are flailing all over the place, President Joe Biden on Wednesday will call for Congress to suspend the federal gas and diesel taxes over the summer to provide relief for American drivers amid record high gas prices. If Congress acts, the 18 cents tax per gallon on gas and a 24-cent tax per gallon on diesel fuel would be lifted for a 3-month period. That would coincide with an expected surge in demand for gas as people travel during the summer. The White House released a fact sheet on the proposal Wednesday morning. I will show you it in just one moment because it's kind of interesting. Quote, a federal gas tax suspension alone won't fix the problem we face, but it will provide families with a little breathing room as we continue working to bring down prices for the long haul. This comes from a senior administration official. The White House acknowledged that a gas tax suspension is only a temporary action, and that in the long term, the tax is needed for the Highway Trust Fund. And Karine Jean-Pierre was asked about this, and we'll get to her answer in a moment. President Biden understands that the gas tax holiday alone will not fix the issue, but he's still going to push it. It's a Band-Aid, and we see this a lot of times with what the Democrats do. They make it seem like what they're doing is going to fix the problem. At least here, they're outspoken about like, hey, it's not going to fix the problem, but at least we're doing something. Look what we're doing. While at the same time, we're hindering oil companies from doing what they need to do in order to produce more, like increasing domestic oil production. But remember, Joe Biden's doing everything he can. He wants to figure out solutions here, folks. He wants to figure out everything he can so you don't have this kitchen table issue, as he calls it. Well, here's the here's the image that they're posting. What do we pay for gasoline of retail regular gasoline prices? This comes from the U.S. Energy Information Administration for gasoline and diesel fuel updates. So on the left-hand side here, if you're listening, it's from 2012 to 2021. The average retail price per gallon was $2.80. Okay. The refining cost and profits were 14%. You have the distribution and marketing, 14.3%. Federal and state taxes was 17%. And crude oil was basically 55% of that. In 2021, the average retail price was $3. Notice they're not really getting into 2022. Granted, we're only halfway through, but I think you could get a good average to kind of detail out where we're at. Refining cost, 14.4%. So refining went up by 0.4%. Distribution and marketing went up by 1.3%. Federal and state taxes actually decreased by 0.6%, and crude oil also decreased by roughly 1%. So hasn't really leveled out. Things are getting worse. Those are 2021 numbers. We know 2022, the average price for a gallon is above $5. You have AAA saying it's probably going to hit anywhere from 6 to 7. China hasn't fully entered the market within itself. And I don't think this gas price is going to be a really do anything. And the reason why I want to bring this up is because of demand and supply. Now, this is all theoretical. It's just where I expect things to go. But when people know that they're basically going to get a discount on a good or service, they tend to flock where that discount is, and they're going to take advantage of it, meaning there's going to be a lot of demand, which is going to end up ultimately hurting the supply. Now, if we're already having supply issues, and Chevron's coming out and saying, look, we're already increasing and have increased up to the point where we're breaking our own company's records on producing, once you give that discount out, don't you think a lot of people are going to flock and try to capitalize and hoard onto that discount of said gas or whatever consumer good it is? I mean, heck, we see it all the time during Black Friday or Christmas time. When you got those deals out there, people are willing to stampede over one another to get certain products that are on sale. And now when they can get cheap gas, and I'm putting cheap in air quotes for those that are listening, they're going to flock, which is going to hurt things and possibly make things worse. I don't know. It's just a guess. We'll have to see where it goes. Well, proponents of the gas tax holiday say it's a quick and easy way to lower prices at the pump. Well, you're assuming it's going to lower price at the pump, but like I said, if it hurts the demand and supply, depending on where it's going, you could potentially see an increase of prices at the pump. But Republicans and energy experts criticized the president's proposal, calling it a fake fix and suggesting it will lead to higher prices overall, which is kind of the direction where I was trying to explain and where kind of I think things will go. Joe Biden has caused gas prices, and this comes from Marsha Blackburn. This is a tweet from Marsha Blackburn. It says, Joe Biden has caused gas prices to hit historic highs by killing American energy and implementing 39 new regulations and executive orders. Suspending the gas tax will not fix Biden's energy crisis. It's a fake fix. Again, it's to make him look good, make it seem like, hey, we have everything under control. We're in a transition phase. And you've heard this time and time again, not just from Joe Biden, but Karine Jean-Pierre. They haven't gave a detail of what the heck this transition is, other than the fact of saying, hey, our economy is going to get better, even though we just went over the numbers that GDP percentage went down by 1.5%, where they kind of averaged out, hey, we think it's going to go by 1.3%. And then we looked at the Dow Jones and what their prediction was of how much it's going to decrease. They said 1.4. And we said Joe Biden's exceeding expectations here by decreasing by a total of 1.5. Like I said, you had the press secretary being asked this question regarding the gas tax and its effect, and this is what she had to say.
When it comes to the federal gas tax, former President Obama has called it a gimmick back when it was being considered during his administration. A number of Republican and Democratic congressional leaders over the years have said the same thing. It saves people a couple of dollars when they fill up, but it decimates the highway trust fund. Why is it suddenly on the table for this president when it seemed like it was an idea that the White House had sort of set to the side for months?
Well, the president has always said all options are on the table. This is one of those options. He was asked a question yesterday and he answered it. I don't want to get ahead of the president. We don't have anything to announce at this time. Once we do, we will, and be happy to answer all the questions around that decision once and if he makes that decision. But again, he has said, he has been very clear, he wants to make sure that he is, dealing with what the Americans are facing at the pump, which is high prices due to inflation, due to the part of it is the pandemic, part of it is Putin's war on Ukraine and the Putin's tax hike. So he wants to do everything that he can to make sure that we are answering those calls of trying to lower the cost. Yeah. Okay.
A lot of things here. They're continuing with the message of Putin's price hike, right? They're messaging of COVID-19, the messaging of all these things, but they're not putting out the messaging of, well, what started this inflation or what started the inflation? Because we have people coming out and saying this inflation, 80% of it was before Putin ever went into Ukraine. And the Biden administration is trying to make it seem like that 80% of it was Russia's fault, 20% of it was COVID-19's fault. And it's flipped. 80% of it was what Joe Biden did in terms of cranking out checks to everybody months on end, where people didn't even go to work. They didn't want to go back to work because the government's paying them more money than they were in the private sector, which if anybody knows anything, the government shouldn't outcompete the private sector. But right here, you have Gates talking during a hearing, and this is the answer he got in terms of 80% of inflation happened before Putin invaded Ukraine.
When President Biden was in Long Beach recently, he described inflation as the Putin tax.
As the what?
The Putin tax. Is that a fair characterization?
No, 80% of the increase in inflation happened before Putin invaded. Now, yes, it is true that Putin's invasion of Russia, and the
Of
reduction
Ukraine.
in
I don't
oil
think-
supply has increased inflation. But I would say 75 to 80% of this is a result of Biden policies.
Well, there you have it. 75 to 80% of it has to do with Biden's policies, but they don't want to admit that. Again, we've seen clip after clip from not just Jen Psaki, but also Karine Jean-Pierre saying the exact same thing. And you got to give kudos to the Biden administration for having the same messaging from press secretary to press secretary to the president, who, again, fumbles through his words every single week. And we've seen all this before. We've seen Barack Obama say this exact same thing in 2008 when gas prices were through the roof. And he said it was just a gimmick. So when you have Joe Biden in office as vice president of the United States and Barack Obama's the president of the United States, it's not okay then, but somehow it's okay now. Let's go ahead and see this clip of Barack Obama.
I know that we're having a debate right now about the gas tax holiday. I know how brutal this is on folks right now. And I know they need relief, which is why I've offered a middle-class tax cut for every American, $1,000 for working families, so that they can deal not only with rising gas prices, but rising health care costs and rising grocery costs. But for us to suggest that 30 cents a day for 3 months is real relief, that's a real energy policy, means that we are not tackling the problem that has to be tackled. We are offering gimmicks. When we're offering the same thing that John McCain's offering on the cheap, that means we're not presenting a truthful response to the challenges that we face in America. We can do better than that this time.
So on the campaign trail, as you just heard, it was a gimmick. And they're offering the same incentives as possibly Republicans at the time. Now, it wasn't good then. It was silly then. It's still silly now. But remember, all options are on the table. But the thing is, not all options are on the table. Joe Biden doesn't want to increase domestic oil production. Joe Biden doesn't want to do certain things because it's going to hurt his base. He made a promise. He made a promise that he's going to get rid of all fossil fuels. We've heard him say as much. But he's going to continue to be chauffeured out and puppeted and wanting to continue to push this clean energy. And look, I want clean energy as well. I want clean energy as much as the next guy. But there's a process to doing it, and you have to be wise about it. And you have to allow it to gradually happen. You can't force it, because when you try to force it, this is exactly what happens. The American people are getting hurt at the pump. Now, there was a response to this. An API has a 10-point plan that includes some solutions that Joe Biden can implement here. Now, Mike Summers, the president and CEO of the American Petroleum Institute, in other words, API, put forward certain resolutions rather than this political rhetoric that the Biden administration Democrats want to push. The first one is lift development restrictions on federal lands and waters. The Department of the Interior, in other words, DOI, should swiftly issue a 5-year program for the outer continental shelf and hold mandated quarterly onshore lease sales with equitable terms. DOI should reinstate canceled sales and valid leases on federal lands and waters. Let me read that again, because it totally pushes against Joe Biden's narrative. DOI should reinstate, meaning they were once there, canceled sales, and reinstate valid leases on federal lands and waters. But remember, they have over 31 leases and permits. Why are they not drilling? Again, we've covered it. Not all of those permits and leases, they will actually drill. Sometimes they jump the gun, they pull something, turns out there's no oil there. Sometimes they do it in terms of competition. Hey, look we're going to start pulling all these permits. Wow, that next guy's going to be drilling a lot. We got to keep up on pace with our competitors. Let's pull permits as well, and vice versa. It's all head game, but Joe Biden doesn't get that. Well, here's another one. Here's another solution. Designate critical energy infrastructure projects. Congress should authorize critical energy infrastructure projects to support the production, processing, and delivery of energy. These projects would be of such concern to the national interest that they would be entitled to undergo a streamlined review and permitting process not to exceed 1 year. Well, hold on, streamlined review? You're telling me Congress takes a long time to get through things? Yeah, Congress does take a long time to get through things, and you have a certain party that wants to hinder certain things like the designated critical energy infrastructure projects that's being proposed here from getting through. So again, there's a lot of things behind the scenes that Joe Biden doesn't want us to know about on how they're hindering all this process of limiting, or should I say, increasing supply of oil and limiting the amount of oil that's actually being out there is their true goal. We have fixed the NEPA permitting process. Your administration should revise the National Environmental Policy Act process by establishing agency uniformity in reviews, limiting reviews to 2 years, and reducing bureaucratic burdens placed on project proponents in terms of size and scope of application submissions. Whoa, reducing bureaucratic burdens? You're meaning there's barriers to all this? There's the government within itself stepping in and saying, hey, you know what? You got to get through this barrier. You have to get through this review. And by the way, it's not going to take 6 months. It's not going to take a year. It's going to take 2 years. But Joe Biden's telling them to do all these things. Oh, increase, refineries. Let's go buy oil from Saudi Arabia. All these other things, rather than dealing with what you can actually do here during certain acts that have been in place by Congress themselves and at previous administrations by fixing and revising the National Environmental Policy Act. Another one here, accelerate LNG exports and approve pending LNG applications. Congress, once again, notice there's a lot of government stuff coming up here, right? Asking government, hey, basically remove, revise, reenact certain things. It's unbelievable. It's and you'll see it just continues. It's every one of these points has to deal with the government basically hindering the oil companies from doing what they need to do. Congress should amend the Natural Gas Act to streamline the Department of Energy to a single approval process for all U.S. liquefied natural gas LNG projects. DOE should approve pending LNG applications to enable the U.S. to deliver reliable energy to our allies abroad. So notice, time and time again, whether you're dealing with oil, whether you're dealing with clean energy, natural gas, there's a process that's constantly being almost bottlenecked by our government on taking forever to approve these processes, leases, whatever it may be, the projects to get through. Unlock investment and access to capital. The SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, should reconsider its overly burdensome and ineffective climate disclosure proposal, and your administration should ensure open capital markets where access is based upon individual company merit, free from artificial constraints based on government-preferred investment allocations. Notice the word artificial there, and we see this a lot with government. They try to artificially do things when you need to allow the market within itself to freely conduct transactions as they see fit, and notice based upon individual company merit, free from artificial constraints. And notice that word too, constraints. They're being stopped or slowed in doing what they need to do, where if you allow the production to at least run somewhat freely, even if you're for some regulations, if you remove those constraints, they'll be able to do at least in part what they say they want to do, and that's produce more oil or refining gas. Dismantle supply chain bottlenecks. You should rescind steel tariffs that remain on oil imports from U.S. allies, as steel is a critical component of energy production, transportation, and refining. Your administration should accelerate efforts to relieve port congestion so that equipment necessary for energy development can be delivered and installed. Granted, this is something that the Biden administration is trying to work on. You look at the Port of Long Beach. I'm extremely near Long Beach, so close to the fact that I literally went to Long Beach State for my accounting degree. That port is massive. They've done everything they can. There's a lot of, we could do a whole show even on that aspect of supply chain. So I'm not going to go too into detail on hounding Biden here for this. I think he is trying in terms of trying to increase the bottlenecks in terms of supply coming through our ports. It's a lot easier said than done. Those ports need to grow. They need to get bigger. Advance low carbon energy tax provision. Congress, again, government's coming up in all these. Congress should expand and extend Section 45Q tax credits for carbon capture, utilization, and storage development, and create a new tax credit for hydrogen produced from all sources. Basically saying, hey, give us an incentive here. And I think incentive is important because somebody might be like, well, why do they need a tax credit? Why do they need these provisions? Because partly the reason why they need some sort of safety net, if this is what you want to call it. I don't really think it's a safety net, but some sort of provision that gives them a credit to their bottom line at the end of the year on something to get back based on how the environment around them, meaning the market, is working. And what I mean by that is you have Joe Biden, most recently, emphasizing that there's a possibility of another shutdown, or in other words, another pandemic coming this fall. And basically saying, hey, we need more money for testing. We need to start pushing out for 5-year-olds to get vaccinations, and all these things. And people are kind of sparked by it and kind of going, okay, what the heck? You're saying that there's another pandemic based on what we've seen before. You're just going to shut everything down again, which goes into, again, what we're talking about here with this oil and what these companies are looking towards of going, well, if we're going into another shutdown possibly, or there's not a lot of stability here in the market, we don't know what the hell's going on. There's a lot of volatility. Why would I want to go produce more oil when I lost billions of dollars during COVID? That's something we forget. Everybody's hounding these companies for making billions of dollars of profit. They lost billions of dollars during COVID. They just had to get rid of their stock of what they had. And so obviously that messed the demand and supply later on. But now they're going, well, shoot, if there's a possibility of us shutting down again, I don't want to lose billions of dollars. I don't answer to Joe Biden. I answer to my stockholders. So do I drill more oil and have that type of risk? Or, do I hold back a little bit and wait for things to figure themselves out and see if things are going to return back to normalcy? Because we haven't been out of this long. I mean, we're basically looking at a year. I know a lot of people think that's a long time, but when you've had that type of situation happen in our global economy, you're going to have a lot of weariness. And now you got inflation throwing into the mix. You have increase in wages, but inflation's going out further or exceeding increase in wages. That's why you have people becoming poorer. All these things are happening, which is why they're looking at, say, hey, there should be some sort of incentive. And that was just one of the many reasons why a tax provision might be necessary. But they're saying, hey, you know what? It would be something nice to have. And maybe we should look at that and extend it so that we can move forward with doing what we're doing. Again, this is one component of many. There's many variables that are taking place here. And I'm trying to break each one of them down and give at least one reason for each thing. Protect competition in the use of refining technologies. Your administration should ensure that future federal agency rulemakings continue to allow U.S. refineries to use the existing critical process technologies to produce the fuels needed for global energy markets. Ensuring that what was put in place is something they continue to use, because when you constantly put more regulations on new technologies or new sectors of those global energy markets, you're going to hinder them from doing, again, what they need to do in refining that oil. End permitting obstruction on natural gas projects. Yet the Federal Energy Regulation Commission should cease efforts to overstep its permitting authority under the Natural Gas Act and should adhere to traditional considerations of public needs, as well as focus on direct impacts arising from the construction and operation of natural gas projects. So this is for the Federal Energy Regulation Commission. Keyword, regulation. Notice that. You have words constraint, regulation, stopping them from doing what they need to do. You have a bottleneck in terms of Congress. And they're trying to say, hey, you need to basically speed up all these processes if this is what you want. And that's a main point of this show as well, is that Joe Biden was completely shocked when he said, hey, we need to do this. And the oil companies are saying that's not possible. And Joe Biden's going, why? And now all of this is coming out going, well, this is what you're doing. This is what government's doing. This is what your energy sector is doing. These are what these certain acts are doing. This is what the barriers that you put in place are doing. This is how oil actually works. This is how competition works. This is how the permits work. This is how you need to extend certain things. And trying to bring out all this stuff that basically Democrats have done decades of hurting these oil companies from doing what they need to do. And they're trying to remove decades worth of work that the Democrat Party has been doing. Do you think Joe Biden's going to want to go through with all of these? I don't think so. I'm not saying it was all the Democrats' fault. I'm sure there's Republicans that have been putting in stupid stuff. But a party that's been working for so long to dismantle the oil industry, and now you have the leader of the free world trying to wage war against them. You think he's going to want to do all these? How's he going to get reelected? When you have all these people, when you had a campaign promise saying, hey, you know what, I'm going to get rid of the fossil fuel industry. We're going to get rid of it all. And this is all going to be brought up that he's working with the oil industry now to produce more oil, to do all these things. I don't think so, folks. I don't think it's going to get any better for the next year and a half. I think they're going to try to run this out as long as they possibly can. They're going to hope that Putin stays in Ukraine, because then they continue to blame it on him. And the next person, this is my opinion, this is where I think things are going to go. I think it's going to be China next. I think they're going to blame all this stuff on China. When Putin in Ukraine runs its course, maybe for the next year, somehow China getting out of COVID-19 themselves is going to destabilize the global economy once again, because they're going to be pulling all that supply. They're running their coal industry over there just to meet the demands of energy for China. When they start getting things up and running again, I guarantee you they're going to be the next person that Biden's going to blame. It's not me. It's China. China entered in, there's still a transition, all these things. The last one here is advance the energy workforce of the future. Congress and your administration should support the training and education of a diverse workforce through increased funding of work-based learning and advancement of STEM programs to nurture the skills necessary to construct and operate oil, natural gas, and other energy infrastructure. And this is something that we lack in majorly in this country is the trades. We push so much to go into colleges. We push so much to go into those fields rather than going into this type of workforce here, kind of the idea of dirty jobs. Mike Rowe has talked at length about this, that we're losing this idea of certain trades. You need people, you need men and women too, to be able to develop and nurture the skills necessary to construct and operate these rigs, to operate the oil refineries, the gas refineries, and other energy infrastructure. You need people to do this, and you need to incentivize people to do this. So this is where we're at with Joe Biden waging war. We've gone over at least everything that's taking place up till now. I don't think Joe Biden's going to do much. I think he's going to make it seem like he's going to do much because he has to appease to his base. He has to appease to the Democrat Party. I don't see any way around it because if he goes with the oil industry and he does what they want, he's going to piss off the Democrats. He's going to piss off his base and he's not going to get reelected. And we already know he said that he's going to be running again or he wants to run again, which is frightening to think about because we all seen his cognitive decline just in the last year and a half. We've seen his cognitive decline since 2008. Granted, that is, 14 years, roughly. So this guy's going to run again. He has an immigration crisis, which we just covered yesterday. If you haven't seen that video, go check it out. He has a gas crisis, an oil crisis, natural gas crisis, foreign policy crisis. Iran has enough material to build a bomb nuclear weapon, supposedly. He's trying to negotiate with them as well. He's pleading with Saudi Arabia for oil. He has a massive economic problem here in the United States. I mean, it's problem after problem after problem that this guy has. And it's been a year and a half, folks. He's like 0 for 8. He hasn't fixed anything. What's one thing that he's actually fixed? That's a major issue. I'm not talking about these little things like, oh, well, he instituted a gas tax relief day for everybody for $3. Like, actually something that he fixed. I'm sure there's something out there that people can list. And here's the thing. Whenever I say things like this of, oh, yeah, what has Biden done? Biden hasn't done anything. Obviously, he has done some things. Every president, regardless of whether you're a sentient human being or not, you've done something. I'm talking substantive things that actually impact something. Maybe somebody could say the ports. Ports have somewhat figured them out. I don't know how much Joe Biden's having an involvement on that. Maybe somebody could also point towards the baby formula thing. Maybe he actually did do some involvement with that, with the FDA allowing the import of baby formula from other countries. Maybe those are some things that we could talk about. But in the grand scheme of everything, you're looking around going, nothing's changed and things are just getting worse. Those are the real things that matter. Getting gas prices down, increasing domestic oil production. If you just say that you're going to increase domestic oil production, you're going to have a lot of people probably off your back going, finally he gets it. But even if you do that, you've noticed and seen the impact of what the regulations in the government has and the hold that they have on these oil companies. This isn't a year thing. Some of these you see take like 2 years. Even if they have these permits, they're making it seem like, well, tomorrow they can go drill, but they're saying, look, there's a workforce that we need. There's certain incentives that we need to be able to do this. Furthermore, the last one, probably the most important one, is the market is too volatile. They don't know where things are going to go, especially when you have the president today saying that, hey, you know what? This is where the economy is going to most likely head. We're looking at another pandemic. We're looking at possibly another shutdown. He didn't say another shutdown. This is what people are speculating. The media are speculating. His own people, the people of the left, MSNBC, CNN, people of the left are speculating that we're going into another shutdown. So with that type of market and the way things are going, Biden has his hands full here. And I think the hole's been dug for him. I don't think he's going to be able to get out of it. But let me know what you think about all this in the comments below. There was a lot there to kind of hold on to. And again, the announcement for the Bald Brad Show, if you missed the other 2 episodes, is we're going to move into more lengthy discussions, more of a podcast style. Not more of a podcast. We are moving into a podcast here for the Bald Brad Show. This will be uploaded starting when I come back from vacation. Podcast will be about 30 to 50 minutes, depending on the content that I want to cover. Give you a little bit of snippet. I'm going in way more detail, I think, on these individual episodes like this on one topic, right? Where we just talked about oil for, I don't know how long this went on for, maybe 30 minutes. I have no idea. Well, this type of topic would maybe last 15 to 20 minutes max on the podcast, and then I'd move into talking about something else, maybe inflation for another 10, 15 minutes. And then I would talk about something else, maybe the ports. We would talk about the ports. Then I'd move on to something else of maybe Karine Jean-Pierre saying something stupid and commenting on that. And then what I would do is upload that as an entire podcast and chop those up. And then we'd have 3 or 4 uploads as well throughout the day that you can kind of catch if you don't or want or are not interested in listening to an hour-long podcast. This is the direction that the show was always supposed to originally go. So that's why if you look even at the old episodes from like a year and a half ago, they were very, very long. And I went over multiple topics in those episodes. So that's where we're going to go. I hope that you can all join me. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. And I will announce, and you'll see, I'll say episode 1 when we actually officially launch the Bald Brad Show podcast. It's going to be more conversational. We still will have reactions, right? I'm still here. I'm still the same person. But rather than me just raging and being total reactionary for the entire clip, I want to have more conversation and kind of give you the details on these stories and give you something you can listen to throughout the day, something you can listen to at work, have the earpiece in, and kind of zone out for a bit and really see in detail what the hell is going on. Because if you're just getting messaging from Fox News and these major outlets, you're only getting snippets. You're not really getting the full detail because they need to move on to the next thing. And I want to be able to provide you that detail and that informative type of show that I've always wanted. And again, it's going to push me to do more research. You can't see on my screen, but I probably have, I don't know how many articles I have up here, but going back and forth, reading you guys things from different places, pulling up different videos. It does take a lot of time, but I enjoy doing it. And I love that there's people that listen. I see all of your comments down below. So hit me up. Do you think Joe Biden's going to be able to figure this out? Because I don't think this guy is. With that being said, I will see you later here on the Bald Brad Show.